The United States Surgeon General recently warned that we are living through a loneliness crisis. Millions of adults say they feel disconnected, unseen, completely alone. But you made a different choice. You looked at certain names on your screen and decided you were done answering, done explaining, done giving pieces of yourself away. And the strange part, you didn't feel empty afterward, you felt calm, maybe calmer than you felt in years. So how does someone become that person? The one who quietly distances themselves and never looks back. Because you were not always this way. There was a version of you that showed up for everyone. The person people called late at night when life was collapsing. The friend who listened for hours. The family member who kept everything from falling apart. The partner who carried emotional weight that was never really theirs to carry. You were dependable, constant, available, and every time someone needed you, you answered. You heard the same problems over and over, offered the same comfort, watched people ignore your advice, repeat the same behavior, then return expecting more of your energy anyway, until eventually, something inside you changed. One day you stopped replying, you let the phone ring, and nothing terrible happened. In fact, everything became quieter. That moment was not cruelty. It was not selfishness. Your brain was responding exactly the way it was built to respond. Psychologist Dr. Stephen Porges explains this through something called Polyvagal Theory. According to this theory, the nervous system constantly shifts between different survival states. One of those states exists specifically to protect you from emotional exhaustion, when you spend too long giving without recovering, when relationships consistently leave you depleted, your nervous system adapts. It stops prioritizing connection and starts prioritizing survival. Researchers describe this as the dorsal vagal response. In simpler language, withdrawal, shutdown, conservation, not because you are damaged, because your mind realized your energy is limited and started protecting it accordingly. But that raises another question. Why did your nervous system begin treating closeness like something dangerous in the first place? For a lot of people, the answer started early. Maybe you learned to study people's emotions before you even understood your own. Maybe you could sense tension the second a parent walked through the door. Maybe you grew up in a home where moods changed unpredictably, where peace disappeared without warning. Psychologist Murray Bowen referred to this as emotional cutoff. It happens when a child unconsciously learns that connection can come with pain, instability, or emotional overwhelm. So you adapted. You became hyperaware, careful, observant. You learned how to read silence, detect shifts in tone, feel tension before anyone said a word. And eventually, being alone started to feel safer than constantly managing everyone else's emotions. Now as an adult, that same survival pattern appears whenever someone gets too close. And no, that does not automatically mean something is wrong with you. It means your younger self created a strategy to survive emotionally difficult environments. But this is where things become more complicated. There is a difference between protecting your peace and isolating yourself from everyone entirely. Not every act of cutting people off comes from the same place. The CDC reports that long-term social isolation can increase the risk of heart disease, stroke, anxiety, and depression. Human beings still need meaningful connection, but what often gets ignored is this: constant exposure to draining, manipulative, or emotionally unsafe relationships can damage you too. So how do you tell the difference between healthy distance and unhealthy isolation? Walls are built from fear. They shut everyone out equally. Boundaries are built from awareness. They are intentional and selective. If distancing yourself from someone brought relief, pay attention to that. If leaving certain people behind created peace instead of guilt, that matters. Sometimes your nervous system recognizes danger long before your mind fully explains it. The real question is not whether you should let people into your life. The real question is who has actually earned access to your inner peace. And deep down, you probably already know the answer, because people who cut others off are usually not impulsive. They are observant. You noticed the friend who only appeared when they needed emotional support. You recognized the family member whose kindness always carried hidden conditions. You saw the cycle in the person who overwhelmed you with affection, disappeared, then returned expecting instant closeness again. You learned patterns, and science supports this. A 2023 study published in Nature Neuroscience found that people exposed to early emotional stress often develop increased sensitivity in the brain regions responsible for threat detection and social awareness. In other words, your brain became exceptionally Skilled at reading people, researchers from the University of Iowa also found that individuals with these experiences tend to use more cognitive processing during social interactions. Their brains constantly analyze tone, behavior, inconsistency, and emotional risk. So when you say, something feels off about this person, that feeling usually did not appear randomly. It came from years of observation your brain quietly stored away. That instinct is not weakness. It is pattern recognition refined through experience, and once you've spent enough years ignoring your intuition and paying for it emotionally, you eventually stop doubting it, which is why you no longer confuse solitude with loneliness. Society often labels people like you as distant, detached, antisocial, emotionally unavailable, but those labels assume that being alone automatically means something is missing. Sometimes it doesn't. There is a huge difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is wanting connection and not having it. Solitude is choosing peace over noise. You are not sitting alone hoping someone remembers you. You are finally existing in an environment where your nervous system can relax. Your silence does not feel empty anymore. It feels safe. Some people will misunderstand that. They will assume you are avoiding life, avoiding love, avoiding vulnerability, but the truth is much deeper than that. You are not running away from people, you are moving toward stability, toward clarity, toward a life that no longer feels emotionally exhausting every single day. That is not isolation, that is self-preservation. So if part of you still wonders whether something is wrong with you for becoming more selective with your energy, hear this carefully. You are not emotionless, you are not uncaring, and you are not incapable of deep connection. You simply learned, through experience, that access to your time, your energy, and your emotional world should not be handed out freely, and instead of allowing painful experiences to harden you completely, you chose something quieter. You chose peace. You chose distance from chaos. You chose softness over constant emotional survival. You chose to protect your mental space before it collapsed completely. And honestly, that takes more strength than most people realize, because sometimes the hardest thing a person can do is stop abandoning themselves to keep everyone else comfortable, and maybe that is where healing actually begins, not in having hundreds of people around you, not in forcing connection that drains you, but in building a small circle where safety, honesty, and calm finally exist together. Harvard's famous 75-year study on happiness reached a simple conclusion. The quality of your relationships matters far more than the quantity. So if your circle became smaller, but healthier, you did not fail socially, you became intentional. And if this feels like something you needed to hear today, maybe it's because a part of you has been carrying guilt for protecting your peace. You do not need to apologize for choosing environments that allow you to breathe. Protect your peace.